welcome to Artist Express. Our guest today is Shawn Delker, a Salina artist. And Shawn, why don't we just start right out by having you tell a little bit about how you came to be an artist and what kind of work you do.
Well, I am a fiber artist. I work with fabric and a sewing machine and needles and thread. I also dye my fabric and do other things too that you wouldn't consider exactly sewing. So I just do a lot of different things with my fabric. That's what I do. And I got started, I always have sewed. You know, when I was young, we grew up sewing back when I was a young girl. Everybody did.
Yes.
Always have loved it and enjoyed it. And then gradually I went into actual quilting and making those traditional quilts, you know, that are the little squares and the triangles and everything. And I got
you have to
bored.
make the points match.
Yes, and making the points match. That doesn't follow my personality very well.
Right.
And so it didn't take me very long to move back into doing more of the art things and not worrying so much about making sure all those little points match.
Yes. Now, how do your mother and grandmother look at this kind of work compared to what they were expected to do?
Oh, yeah. Well, unfortunately, my mother and my grandmother are no longer living.
Oh,
And so I can't share this with them. And I wished I could. I think especially my grandmother would be totally bamboozled
yeah,
by what I did because it's so different than what she did. But she was also an artist.
yes.
And she did so she was totally an artist and did a lot of teaching and that sort of thing with her artwork. So I think she would just have been, and my mother too was an artist in her own way. She made cloth dolls. So she was interested in doing that sort of thing. So I think they both would have been totally fascinated with it.
And you might have sparked a whole new direction for them.
I might have if I had a chance.
Exactly, yes.
So,
Well, in terms of your quilts, I know they're not traditional and more along the lines of a little more improvisational than
yeah.
the traditional quilts. So I know, because I'm familiar with your work, Shawn, I have a little advantage here over some of
You
our
do.
viewers perhaps, but talk a little bit about the ideas that provide the content. Your quilts are not simply decoration, and they're not functional often as in the traditional way that quilts have functioned. And so talk a little bit about the inspiration for the ideas that are evident in your quilts.
Well, I kind of have two different styles that I use. And one style is all hand done type
Yes.
of work. And the one I sent a picture of bits and pieces
Yeah.
to the TV, and bits and pieces was totally inspired. Those pieces of fabric, and just like we talked about my grandmother and mother, those are pieces of fabric from both of them that I took and layered together and put the colors together and then stitched it and added fabric beads and yarn and stuff. And that's really a tribute to my mother and my grandmother, because I used fabric that they had and
Yes.
in their clothing. So it was really a cool experience to just put those together the way I wanted to. Sometimes I use photographs, like my husband will take a picture of birds or something using his remote camera. And so I fall in love with a particular photo that he takes, and then I use that to thread paint the birds. And Mr. and Mrs. Finch that I sent to the TV station, is a thread painted finch on some of my hand dyed fabrics that I did.
Great. Well, you
Yeah.
know, I share much of your background, and I have my grandmother's thimble and my mother's thimble. So those are treasured
Yes.
items for me, along
Yeah.
with their fabric scraps as well. There's
Yeah.
something very much alive in those fabrics, I think,
Yes. There
that you know
was. It
they
was
touch.
a really, yeah, yes, very
Exactly.
much so.
Well, where could people in Salina and the surrounding region go to see some of your work?
Well, I do have a website that they can see all my work, and my website is www.benttwigquilts.com.
So there'll be two T's there, BENTTWIG, big
Yep,
bent
got
twig
it.
quilts. Okay. We'll remind them one more time when it's time to leave so that everyone can do that. And then do you have any shows on exhibition right now or
Well,
coming up
I
soon?
applied. Yes, I did. I applied, and then I think it's Friday. It'll go online live and got one of my pieces in. It's called Mockingbird Joy. I don't remember. Dance of the Mockingbird is what it's called.
Okay.
And I sent that picture to you guys too. And that was honored and will be on an online expedition. And that can be viewed at EDGE Edge CFA.com.
Okay.
That's edgecfa.com, all
And
lowercase.
and who put that show together?
This is a small group of artists. We are from all over the
Oh, great.
world, even have one in Belgium. And
I love
so
it.
we're a small group of online artists that we once a year have some sort of a show, and sometimes because it's of the virus, we're having an online show this time.
Yes.
But sometimes it's an actual show, and we show in places like Topeka and Kansas City and stuff like that.
That was my next question. If the
Yeah,
show it's accessible to all of us then, when we
it
do get
would
back
be.
to our new normal and can travel
Yes.
a bit, there might be a
Yeah.
chance to see that.
Yeah, and I always post those on my website if anybody wants to follow me. So
Now, do you expand? You talked about your mother and your grandmother being artists in other media. Have you ventured out to try other mediums in art, painting or sculpture or whatever?
not actually. I've been kind of concentrating on fabric and textiles, partly because I know quite a bit about it, and I
Yes.
feel like even with textiles, I can do 3D.
Yes.
Things. So I don't feel it, and I do the painting. I paint on fabric,
Yeah.
so I don't
There
feel
you are. Yes.
it's giving me some places to go with my artwork rather than when you paint, you just have a canvas and that. But with fabric, I paint, I draw, and I get to stitch too.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really fun when you can pull things together like that.
Yeah.
Now, what, in addition to the creative activity, what do you find personally rewarding about this opportunity to express yourself? Or are there other benefits besides just the fact that you like to use your hands to make things?
Yeah, That's a good question. And there are some benefits. I love, and that's one thing that this isolation is driving me crazy. I love sharing my art with other people, talking to people about my art, um, and telling them how I did it, and even teaching how to do it. And I haven't had much opportunity to do that. So that's one thing I love. But just the action of doing it is a very healing process. I just finished working on a tiny little book with 2-inch size pages. I posted it on Facebook recently.
I saw it
And
actually. It's lovely.
yeah, yeah, and it was so fun. Each page has an encouraging word on it. And for me to search for those encouraging words and put those on there and stitch each one on by hand very carefully on a teeny tiny page was important to me, to remind myself to stay positive, even though I can't do everything that I love to do right now.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever surprise yourself with your work? Does it always come out exactly the way you envisioned it, or do you embrace serendipity?
I love serendipity. I think that I don't plan my work out at all. I'm not good about that. I would prefer to put it down and go, well, that's not right, or something's wrong there. In fact, I have a piece right now and I've set it up, and every time I go past it, I go, I don't like that part, and change something
Yes,
until I finally sit down and actually stitch it. But it's a long process. I like to take my time to decide, well, that doesn't look right, something's wrong with it, or it needs a little more. And that's how I like to work.
so you let your work evolve.
Yes, it totally is evolved. And when I first thought an artist, I thought an artist had to have it all planned out on little
Yes,
pieces of paper, and all figured out. And when I learned that there's artists out there that don't do that, that's when it gave me the freedom to become an artist. And that
exactly.
was kind of a very freeing moment when I learned about that.
Yeah, that artist word is a little scary.
Yeah,
I
it
think
is.
there's so much to live up to. Now,
Yes.
if we walked into your house right now, what evidence
Mhm.
would we see of your creativity and the pursuits that you enjoy?
Well, I think you would see that my artwork is all over the walls, and I don't have very much of anything else but my artwork. And then you would see in my living room a big pile of fabric all ready to go out and be dyed. I am looking into doing some uh, natural dyes, and I have a piece of linen that I want a natural dye. That's all sitting down, tables and everything, until the day that I have time to go outside and do my natural dyeing. And then if you go upstairs, you will see piles and piles of stuff in my sewing room of fabrics, and projects started here and projects started. I always have 5 or 6. I can't help it.
I know, I
And then
understand.
I have a dyeing room where I can play with the paints and dyes and that sort of thing in my downstairs. So I have about 5 rooms that I've overtaken with my my stuff.
It does seem to expand to fit whatever
Yeah.
space is available, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah. Right now, my little sewing studio is expanded out into several other bedrooms.
Well, Shawn, we're running out of time. I want to remind everyone that they can see your work at benttwigquilts.com, also at edgecfa.com. So thank you so
Right.
much for sharing your work with us today and telling us a little bit about it. And maybe we can figure out a way to see it in person before too much longer.
It is frustrating because the pictures don't do them justice, that's
That's
for sure.
exactly right. Thank you all for being with us today. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.